everybody. Welcome to the show. I'm very happy today because I get to have a little chat with my friend Bill Robertson, who is an attorney, not just an attorney, but has been an attorney for, I don't know, ever. And I met Bill probably about 6 or 7 years ago. And our connection started through Joe Part at All Trust and Steve Hall. And now here we are all these years later. I've had a great respect for Bill Robertson. He's got an amazing practice now on his own for the last year. And what a year to start out on your own in 2020, Bill. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thank you for having me. Yes, I remember, I think we first met when we were doing some veterans outreaches, and we're on a Bay News 9 broadcast on the veterans funds that we were establishing to help veterans in our area. And I think that's where I met you, through Steve Hall. And we've been fast friends ever since. And I certainly respect you and what you do as well.
Thank you so much, Bill. And you know, I was just having this conversation today with my media team that if it wasn't for All Trust, I would have never met you, Bill. If it wasn't for you, Bill, I would have never met Dr. Richard Shulman. And if it wasn't for Dr. Richard Shulman, I would have never met Dr. Mark Sylvester. So the power of collaboration and connection goes way, way, way back for us. So I'm super grateful to have you here today. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm honored to be on here. In fact, my practice is one of networking. I don't do any advertising like the other big advertising personal injury firms around. It's all based upon relationships that I have with other attorneys, other health code professionals, and folks like yourself in the market. And that's how I've successfully sustained this competitive personal injury practice for the last 36 years.
Yeah, just 36 years.
Yeah,
so I'd like to debunk a few things, if you will let me, for just a moment, about personal injury attorneys. We've had this conversation before. Everybody says the same thing, ambulance chasers, and which, you know, makes me laugh. I actually started my career at 22 years old working for a personal injury firm way back in the day. And you worked super hard for your clients. There's no question about it. You guys are fighters, in my opinion, for clients that come with all kinds of personal injuries. Why don't you talk a little bit about what you do, what your practice is about?
I'm glad you brought that up, because I had hosted a radio show called Let's Talk Law for 3 years for the very same reason, to kind of debunk what the legal profession was all about and what us personal injury lawyers do. And first and foremost, it's a practice area that I think we can do more for people than almost any other profession can. The courtroom is a level playing field where I can go represent a client, an individual client, against somebody like the major pharmaceutical companies, which we're suing now. And it's a level playing field, and allows a personal injury attorney or an attorney to get justice for their clients. And we work on a contingency fee basis, which means if we don't get any settlement, we don't get paid. And we might have a case, and we also advance costs for our clients that are necessary to prosecute the claims. And I had one case, for example, that was a dear client that I met. He was actually killed in an aviation crash in Sarasota and Bradenton Airport. And we ended up suing the FAA because the air traffic controllers were negligent in steering two planes into one another, and representing his widow. And it took us 4 years to get through the process. And during that time, I spent about $250,000 to $275,000 of my own money to prosecute the case and to carry the cost on that case, to finally get a result where we ended up getting almost $2 million for the surviving spouse, who was handicapped and not able to care for herself after that process. So we went 4 years without earning a dime, and in the meantime spending $250,000 to $275,000 worth of my money that I advanced for her to get the end result that we were able to achieve. And so, you know, people don't understand what we really do. And I tell people when they ask me about personal injury, I said, I bet if I told the story of all the clients that I have, each one individually, anybody out there would say, you know what, you're right, there's a case that needs to be pursued. Somebody needs to represent them. Just had a case where a husband, they've been married 50 years, and he just got killed in a crosswalk here locally when a driver was being careless and killed him. And the widow comes to me with, you know, she didn't know what to do. And so I pick up the pieces from a legal standpoint and help them through the process. And not only as a lawyer, but we counsel them through the grief process and work with them. And so I will tell you this, the practice is very difficult emotionally because you have to be invested in your clients, but it's also very rewarding because the clients come to you in the end saying, thank you so much for what you did for me. And I think, the thanks that I get from the clients who, when I call them up and say, I got a settlement, and I've had a client recently come in who had lost her husband in a different situation, was able to give her a large settlement that she started crying because that would solve her financial problems because I was able to help her. And when a client leaves my office, I tell them your only job is to go get better and heal as best you can. I'll take care of all the stuff from a legal standpoint that needs to be cared for, so that you can do what you can do. So, a long-winded introduction into the personal injury practice and to why I do what I do, because I feel like I really make a difference for people in their lives that have been shattered and thrown into turmoil, in an instant when they weren't expecting it.
Yeah, no, I understand, mostly because I've had the great opportunity to spend some time, not just with you, but other friends of mine who are personal injury attorneys. And, I could say the same, it's what everybody says about doctors, oh, they're just trying to scam you and make more money. If they only knew like exactly what the insurance company paid these physicians, to spend hours and hours and go to the hospital in the morning to see babies before they see patients or whatever, specialty they're in. So I'm glad that you were able to explain that a little more to our viewers, to our listeners. So, of course, because of the work that you do for the opioid epidemic, I have a great respect for all the work that you've put in. Could you give the audience just a little background on the beginnings and the why of your passion to not just help veterans, because Bill is a huge advocate for veterans, which I, of course, respect as well. But because I'm a sober drug addict, alcoholic, proud to say it, 26 years later, of course, I know the work that goes into helping these families. So maybe share a little bit about the opioid crisis and your involvement.
I'm honored to be able to be involved in trying to right some wrongs in that context. I grew up, I have 4 children. I coach youth soccer, and all of my kids have friends of theirs who didn't make it to age 20 because of opioid overdoses. I have at least 2 or 3 of the kids that I coached in youth soccer who died before they reached age 20 of an opioid overdose. You can see I'm getting a little bit emotional because of the impact that it's had on every family that's out there. And it transcends all social stratas and financial stratas. You can have all the money in the world and it still can't save you from the demons that are caused when you get stuck on this opioid stuff. And it's insidious. And that's why there's a recent a guilty plea that Purdue Pharmaceuticals entered with the Department of Justice to criminal fraud and felony violations for misrepresentation. So the conduct that they've engaged in has been criminal. And they've been found to be criminal. And there's a settlement with the DOJ and the Purdue pharmaceutical case right now that's in the $1 billion range. But the point being is that they embarked on this process to promote opioids as a long-term pain process, or to assist in chronic pain. And it's not designed for that. It's great for care, post-accident care or post-surgical care for a week or so or 2 weeks. It's great, and there's nothing like it for palliative care at the end of life to help people be comfortable, but it's not for chronic pain because the body gets used to it and it changes your brain chemistry. And I think if you are on opioids for 3 to 4 to 5 weeks, statistically, there's about a 60% chance that you're going to be addicted for life. And part of the problem is that now that they've closed all the pill mills down, and the kids and whoever's addicted to it are now having to go to the street, and they're getting the heroin, which is laced with high-powered fentanyl, and that's where all the opioid overdoses are coming now, is people can't afford to pay the pill prices. So it's a vicious cycle, and the damages that are caused in the communities financially, just taking care of opioid issues, whether it be incarceration, treatment, or hospitalization, is in the trillions of dollars per year nationwide. And so the lawsuits that have been filed on behalf of all the states, as well as many municipalities, I'm representing the City of Sarasota and the City of Palmetto, as well as Sarasota Memorial Hospital, and trying to recoup the costs associated with the opioid crisis, the unreimbursed costs. And so that's what the nature of all these lawsuits are on behalf of states and municipalities and different tribes, Indian tribes and so forth, to recoup the cost of that and to make these pharmaceutical manufacturers as well as the distributors responsible for what they started. And it's squarely on their shoulders for what they've done and how this has become so rampant. Just the worst crisis, the healthcare crisis we ever had in the history of this country. There's 70 some odd thousand people a year that are dying of opioid related overdoses. And so it's catastrophic in the loss of life. And from a financial standpoint, it's trillions of dollars in cost to states and municipalities and dealing with it, from, you know, the incarceration issue to people who are stealing to feed their habits. And so, you know, the thing that makes it so obvious is that they were in it for the money. That's all they cared about. They have an obligation under the federal law to monitor where these pills are going. And if it looks like there's some diversion of a pill or too many pills going into one place, they're supposed to stop it. I think the worst example that I found, I was writing it down before we talked, there's a little city called Kermit, Kentucky, that has 392 residents. And in 2 years, they ran 9 million pills through that town.
Oh my
So
God.
strictly an opioid pill mill, and it's the responsibility of the manufacturers and the distributors to see something like that and stop it. And so anyway, I could go on and on about statistics and things, but the courts, there's a number of lawsuits pending in federal court around the country. And over the next 2 to 4 years, you're going to see significant settlements coming down the pike where you're going to have these people funding the cost of care and the the cost of the incarceration, all the other associated costs with the opioid. So long-winded introduction. What's that?
You have your hands full there. Bill.
Yeah, you know, it's. I think there's probably almost 2,000 lawsuits pending, so I'm only one of hundreds and hundreds of lawyers that are involved in this process. But you know, having a personal stake in it, knowing kids that have died, and having friends of my kids who have died from it, you feel like you're doing something right. It's kind of like when everybody took on tobacco, big tobacco. It was finally brought them to the table and made them accountable for what they did and misrepresenting the addictive nature of the cigarettes.
True. Yeah. You know, I've often said that I've been very blessed in the sense that I got out when I was 21 of that world of addiction, and heroin was the only drug I had yet to try. So just to, you know, you mentioned the word insidious, which is a word that we use a lot in 12-step recovery, because it's an insidious disease to be an alcoholic or a drug addict. It's just like any other disease, although many, many people, of course, cannot understand it, kind of like they don't understand the personal injury world. Bill, you know, if you don't have an understanding, if you don't learn about it, you'll be in blissful ignorance for life. But when I was removed from the opioid crisis, and I have, of course, watched many people that I've known and loved through the years die of overdoses. And, you know, mostly my friends who have been very successful in life. Because like you mentioned, once, you know, the opioids, you can't get them anymore. They're not being prescribed. Like you said, there's no more pill mills. People are going out and buying heroin off the streets, which is lethal, just completely lethal. And we've lost too many people. So I really appreciate all of the work that you're doing. I know how emotionally attached you are to it, as am I, but you are doing the work of some higher source out there, Bill. So thank you for that. I want to talk to you about, you know, you personally just moving through this crisis that we're in right now, coming out a little bit because we have the vaccine, and that's still, it's going to take a long time. But you, in the midst of being a personal injury attorney, you know, opened a new business, you know, March, and you're like, I'm gonna start my own practice, and kaboom, pandemic hits. So tell the community what that was like for you, Bill.
Timing is everything, they say, and I usually pick the wrong timing. I buy stocks high and sell them low and so forth. But you know, half jokingly, but basically, I've been with the Kirk Pinkerton firm for 36 years, and the last 10 years was the CEO of the company, and ran it for years. And you know, I decided that I wanted to get back to my roots. My family, actually, I'm a 5th generation lawyer in this area. And it goes back to my great-great-grandfather, who was a Confederate colonel in the Civil War, captured Gettysburg, was the Attorney General of the state of Tennessee after the war, and then my great-great-grandfather and grandfather moved to Sarasota in 1925 and opened a Robertson and Robertson here and practiced here until the 1980s. My dad joined him in the 50s, and so the Robertsons had been heavily involved in the growth of this area and the development of Southwest Florida for years. And my plan was to practice with them when I got out of law school, but my dad had passed away before I graduated, and the firm kind of folded into another firm. So I joined Kirk Pinkerton and had a wonderful run with some of the brightest lawyers to ever see this community. But I always had this pang to get back to my roots and practice under the Robertson name. So I decided in January of this year, I opened my own firm, the Robertson Law Firm. I actually officially moved into my new space March 1st, timing wise, and completely left the other firm and started March 1st, and then the pandemic hit. So it's been an interesting run, but it's been the best move that I've ever made in my practice. I have a super paralegal who works with me, and my wife is actually I commandeered her to be my CFO, and she's doing all the finances and payroll and things. And so it's great to work for myself. Everybody touted it all the years that you should be doing this on your own, and I should have done it sooner because I answer only to myself, which is good and bad. But I'm very proud to pick up the tradition under the Robertson shingle and name that's been so instrumental in serving Southwest Florida for so many years, and I'm looking forward to what the next years hold in the practice. But it's been good, and the pandemic was interesting to steer through, but we're going strong, and I'm very proud of what we're able to accomplish in a relatively short period of time.
Well, I've had the great pleasure of meeting your wife, so I know that you're in good hands.
Yes, I have a great boss.
Right. So I want to know, Bill, what you've learned as a human being through this pandemic, through this year of 2020 that we are very excited to say goodbye to in the next few weeks.
I would say growing up in the South and growing up on hugs and human contact, it's been really, really difficult to sequester yourself and not be able to do that. In our office here where I'm renting, there's another law firm, and there's 4 other lawyers plus a number of paralegals, and we have to wear masks, and we walk into our office every day, take our mask off, we don't congregate, and so on and so forth. And it's been very difficult for me. I'm a very people person, and I like to be around people, and it's just hard to be isolated. We have our grandkids and our kids, and we do that, but we're trying to be careful. My wife has elderly parents, and so it's like, even on a minor scale, you're always worried about what's going to happen, and when you might get the COVID and what it might do. And so this overhanging feeling of risk or threat is something that really wears on you, and the COVID fatigue has hit us all. And when I can't hug somebody, which is what I do with everybody, that's how I was raised, it's hard. It's hard to reach out and fist bump somebody or elbow bump somebody. It seems so corny, and it's changed all the social constructs that I grew up on. So it's been difficult, and I'm looking forward to getting out there again and not worrying about being 6 feet away from somebody else at a table. It's been very difficult.
Yeah, it's been very difficult for all of us, and I agree with you. I think that I'm a hugger. You're from the South, I'm from New York, so that's what we come in for, the big New York hug all the time. And I think some people might be happy that I'm not coming in for that hug all the time, but I understand, and I think that we've all navigated as best as we can, but certainly we've learned a lot of lessons along the way. Bill, we are going to have all the information about how to contact you. I, of course, highly recommend your services. I'm very, very happy that you are on your own. I do know that entrepreneurial spirit that you have. You've helped so many, not just the veterans, but people that have lost their lives due to this crisis, and so many people, like you've mentioned, along the way that, losing somebody in an accident and putting their mind at ease by them just not having to worry about their legal cases is huge. I've watched it in person myself. So Bill, I'd like to say thank you for being here with us today. I look forward to a big hug in the later part of 2021.
Yeah, post-vaccine, maybe, I guess. I don't know. Maybe we'll talk about that next time. But I thank you. Thank you so much. I certainly am proud to know you and honored to know you, and am proud of your personal story that you've shared, and it's been inspiring to a lot of folks. So I have never had an addiction, so I don't know what it's like, but I know you have, and your story of perseverance. And for those who don't know it, they need to read your book. It's
Yeah, it's
inspiring.
Audible now, Bill.
Awesome.
This past Friday, so now people can
I
listen.
highly recommend it, just because it's an inspiring story, and for you to open up and talk about those things that a lot of folks wouldn't be willing to, is encouraging to people, and it's really an inspiring story. So I greatly admire you for what you've done and where you are, where you've come, and proud to honor you, to be honored as a friend.
Thank you so much, Bill. Well, you know what? If we are not helping others today, why are we here?
Exactly.
Right? So thank you for being here today, Bill.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been my pleasure and honor.
Don't forget, if you mention that you have seen the show or listened to the podcast, Thai Technology, 3 months for free.